God.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Paul, and I'm an alcoholic. And
Hey, Paul.
I'm a grateful person to be your retreat master this weekend. What a delight. It's unbelievable. I'm learning so much, and somehow I feel God's presence here because I just keep feeling reassured. Okay, Paul, you're okay. You're where you ought to be. You know, you're talking to the person you ought to be talking to. You're listening to the person you ought to be listening to. You're offering advice to the person you ought to advise. My advice, not yours. You know? And I see the same thing happening among you guys. You know, whether it's just conviviality or getting, reacquainted and things like that. But that opportunity that we have to be able to share the language of the heart, to get to, what makes us tick. That what an opportunity, and then here I am, that they call me a retreat master, I'm looking for the mistress. Good comment. But I'm just one of you guys.
Don't forget the tip.
I'm just another bloke on the bus, and bozo on the bus. It's great. I mentioned in the last session, something that one of the authors that I really enjoyed and had a lot. This is a little bit about conversion. Just one line from him. This is from Michael O'Brien. He had this offer: how else do we know God's rescue unless we have been drowning? Can healing be demonstrated without injury? A love proven without trial? Still there is an ache within me that cries out, what of those who are not protected, who are left unhealed, who do not know love? The reply is articulated by, and can only be articulated by, God dying with us on the cross. It's His plan, it was Father's will, that was permitted, or that was ordained, whatever it might be. There was just so many tremendous, good spiritual authors, such as this gentleman here too, that just blow me away, and having that sort of, presented, like he would throw these things throughout that novel, things like, I got to underline that one. My wife goes, here you go again. But that's the richness that we have at our doorstep, and I'm just so blessed that I came in class in '93, because it just seemed like that was an explosion when a lot of this information, whether it be books or different types of media, became readily available. So any questions that I had, anything like that, I'd be able to find the resource pretty quickly. I don't have to go back and figure out the Dewey Decimal System or anything like that to find anything reading on that. And that, if you like this, you'll like this. You learn this, you learn that. So that was just one. One thing that was pointed out to me during the lunch, and this is, I just had a brain cramp anyway. I want to leave some time in this session, for us to be able to reflect among ourselves about what I have to say, I think that's important, and that's elementary. But I'm going to save it to the end. The only reason I say that, is that it was explained to me one time that a person has been going to more retreats than I've ever gone to, is that when you said, just open it up, that you end up going into a tangent, and some of the importance, and then I will feel compelled, I got some more good shit to tell you. And then I'll race through it, and it's just going to be trash. So for selfish reasons, then I'll just do that. But I want to make that. And if I don't, or I forget, I'll say, hey, Paul, I thought we were going to talk. It's not all your show. It's like, I want to do it like an AA meeting. Now it's your meeting. Okay? So I don't think that's important. I'll open this up, and the particular topic of this is really spiritual maturity. I guess it's the best if you had to come up with a topic. But here's a quote from Bishop Sheen. He's talking about nice people, and this is the way that the culture will probably, reinforce for me, and that I would just say that from the outside looking in, that I'm doing okay. And I know that I could do better. And I know what I ought to do. But he says this: the nice people do not come to God because they think they are good through their own merits or bad through their own instincts. They do good, they believe, they are to receive the credit for it. If they do evil, they deny it's their own fault. They are good through their own good-heartedness, they say, but they are bad because of misfortune. Either they are in economic life or through an inheritance or evil genes from their grandparents. Nice people rarely come to God. They take their moral tone from society in which they live. Like the Pharisee in front of the temple, they believe themselves to be respectable citizens. Elegance is their virtue. To them, moral aesthetic and evil is ugly. Every move they make is dedicated not by love of goodness, but by the influence of their age. Their intellects are cultivated in knowledge of current events. They read only bestsellers, but their hearts are undisciplined. They say that they would go to church if the church were only better, but they never tell you how much better the church must be before they join it. They sometimes condemn the gross sins of society, such as murder. They are not tempted to these because they fear the opprobrium which comes to those who commit them. By avoiding sins which the society condemns, they escape reproach. They consider themselves good par excellence. You know? So easy for me just coming to meetings and even taking the alcohol away to be able to coast through life, you know, with that. That would be my spiritual maturity. I'm doing okay. Even if I were to say, like, I'm going to Mass, you know, but you're not even thinking about it, just going through the motions. But all these things. You know, and part of the problem is, you know, the society we live in is in such a toxic society that continues to become more toxic. You know, and I'm just saying this is the first time, guys, you know, because this has been repeated in ages before, you know. We're like the Israelites out in the desert. You know, we're being formed and we don't even know it. But the point is that we just don't get it as a society. And God's still reaching out for us. Okay? Aristotle thought that there are 3 reasons for seeking knowledge. The most important is truth. The next is action. And the last and least is power, or the ability to make things, like technique and the like. Okay? But unfortunately, materialism crept into our consciousness, or our thought, our philosophies. And one of those champions was Francis Bacon, and all the other modernists, okay, who just put that upside down. You know, it's that technique, what I can do, you know, that's most important. Forget about God. Yeah. Moral values have become so privatized and collectivized. On one hand, the modern mind has fallen to the victim of what C.S. Lewis calls the poison of subjectivism. The ideal that morality is man-made, private, subjective, a matter of feeling, a subdivision of psychology. I feel replaces I believe. On one hand, society has socialized and collectivized morality. Consensus. Okay? Consensus determines rightness and wrongness. Okay? And democracy becomes our religion. The people have spoken. So it's the truth. I fall into this trap. Everyone falls into this trap. But that's the reality. That's the current coming downstream that's dictating the way that I live, the way that I look at things, the way that I accept things, the way that I coast through my living. The effect of this contradiction is that feeling life, our inner world, the values, is set against this outer reality and behavior. A world governed by social mores, no longer really morals. Okay? Values are thought like ghosts, like blobs of psychic energy. It's out there, but it's nothing terribly important. They're more like brute facts, like machines, the ways people do, in fact, behave, not way they ought to. So there's a lot of backtrap, you know, that we all have, you know. And the other thing is, too, we still have, you know, this whole notion there, too. We have just a meek and mild Jesus. That's the way we try to frame popularly Christianity. Oh, God's compassion. He's merciful. He'll understand. We have reduced Jesus to the meek model of Jesus because we have reduced the virtues to one, being kind. And we measure Jesus by our own standard instead of measuring him by his. So I never even took the time to ask. Why have we reduced all these virtues to being kind? Because we have reduced all goods to one. That kindness ministers to pleasure, comfort, and contentment. We have reduced ourselves to pleasure-seeking animals. So there's a problem. There's a lot that I'm going up against. So everything that I do in the spiritual life is really countercultural. Not part of that social mores. Me putting God first? Oh, yeah. Be all you can be. All that other nonsense. And my sponsor told me, remember, Paul, he says, you got another liability. You're an American. And the last 4 letters of that is a 4-letter word for an alcoholic. I can. I can. It's all about me. So this whole modernity, that began in the time of the Enlightenment and all that stuff, and I can quote you different philosophers and all that stuff of how it happened. But the fact of the matter is just like my alcoholism. It's a fact, Jack. So how are you going to live? How are you going to live your life? Am I going to take the high road and live the way that I ought to live? Or am I going to buy into it? I'm going to be a nice guy. They plan this. Oh, he was a nice guy. Maybe it'll be like the town drunk in Angel's Ashes. He was a good man, but he had a fault. I don't know. Or could it just be a say, I'm glad someone out there is living the way it ought to be living. That gives me hope. I can't get there, but shit. I guess it is humanly possible. That gives me hope. That's why I saw in the halls these people that have been really in recovery, that really turned their lives over to God. My friend John A. All these things. So there's that, okay. But the thing is that the spiritual journey, okay, is going to really require me, is constant conversion. Constant conversion. I would just like to think that once I hit my bottom, I turn my life over to God, that's it. And then when things got difficult and I found out the second part of the first step, my life's on manual, I said, okay, here's my life. But I wasn't getting all that specific. But I wasn't keeping on a daily practice, nor was I willing to position myself to be open to different ways that I'd be converted, that God would convert me, or allow me to be converted. There's a book about the life of Saint Teresa of Lisieux. I think I'll bring it up now. And she was really, my spirituality, again, to pick up from my sponsor, is more like Saint Teresa of Lisieux, the little things. I'm not going to show God what a big shot I am, how I'm going to fix it. There's that little daily humble giving. Those instances, we do those little acts of kindness and stuff like that. Just keep your head down and just keep doing it. She passed away, and until they picked up her journals, they had no idea they had a saint on their hands. Maybe she was nice and stuff like that. She was so damn quiet. But she was always giving. She was always falling herself into God. And that she just saw herself as a little child falling into God. He knows that I need him. He knows I can't get up the stairs. He's going to pick me up. That sort of spirituality, that she had. Tell you the truth. It's not number 5. I don't have it. I'll get to that anyway. But essentially, what she's saying, okay, is that I have to be open for all the other disciplines that are going to occur. There are the things that I do, like the certain quiet times that I do. Okay? Or certain spiritual practices that I do. Okay? Aren't going to be enough. They're not going to work anymore. And I have to find new ways to be refreshed. To hit the restart button. To perhaps to get that now I see the world a little bit differently than I did before. I never thought of that before. And that's what it is for the spiritual life, And just like AA, 24 hours, it's one day at a time. So is the spiritual life. Father Joe, I can remember what he said. He said when he was about 3 years sober. He's saying to our Father, give us this day our daily bread. Oh, shit, it's one day at a time. I know that. I'm looking for all my octane on Sunday if I go there on Sunday. Never knowing that all I want is the grace that I need to do His will today. Not tomorrow. Not to prepare tomorrow like, this I was talking about with Pascal with the present, all that planning for the future. Give me the grace to do what I got to do today. And that's all. I have a section here on anger with God. I'm going to kind of dispense with that, but I do have a number of reflections, so at some point I might be able to get it to you guys, okay? But let me just see if there's a couple of points here that I ought to submit. One of my sources that I had for this thing, and I don't know how I came upon this thing, I just heard about it. And it's this book here, The Way to Christ, Spiritual Exercises, by Carl Ortiz. Back in '62, he was a university professor. He did a retreat right around Lent with university students. And someone took a transcript of it. And only a few years ago it was translated into English. But the wisdom that he has, particularly about male spirituality, it just absolutely blew me away when I read this chapter. He had it. He took the guys together, all the male students. Okay. All you hot shots that I hear because you want to grow spiritually and all this. And here's what he had to say. And this is about males. And this is like, you just kind of go, I didn't know there really was a difference. So that's, I'm tacking against that wind. Yeah. Or to find a way that God will give you the grace to overcome, the negative effects of that sort of penalty. He says this, we all have certain male arrogance. The rich young man, the Bible's story of the rich young man, what ought I do to enter the kingdom of heaven? Keep my commands. Well, I do that. What else? The arrogance that he had in that statement, you think about it. Okay. What else? Okay. He said, he says, the rich young man gives a glimpse of another characteristic of our lack of willingness to give. Because then he says, follow me, give. Follow me. He says, we are ready to conquer in terms of enjoyment, profit, gain, and success, and even moral order. Then comes the question of giving, and at this point we hang back because we are not prepared to give. It's the way I'm wired. The element of this is so characteristic under other forms in spiritual portrait of women is bare perceptible in men. Women aren't this way. Until I read this, I had no idea how my wife could just be naturally giving and loving and spiritual. These sort of things that you love. I'm always stepping back. I'll love you, okay? It's almost like, is it really my responsibility? Is it time? Is there something else I ought to do? And that's what he's talking about here. Okay, he says, our analysis of this gospel incident can be used now as a starting point for a specific reflection on your particular condition in life. Because it's easy to discern similar traits and element in the spiritual portrait of each of us. Male arrogance, scant willingness to give, and a spirit of conquest. And that conquest could not only be just up for power, but just be, I gotta get this shit done. So I can stretch. So we have a spirit of conquest and dominion in various spheres of life. And this can also be our attitudes in religious matters. Now he gets into the real heart of this challenge. There's a certain tendency to see religion as women's matter and something rather unsuitable for men. Men always feel more at home in the role of Nicodemus. You remember him? Nicodemus was a member of the Sanhedrin who recognized Jesus, but only in secret. I'm not saying he already believed in him. However, he recognized him and he visited him by night, at times when nobody would see him. We have the tendency toward that Nicodemus type of religious attitude, toward the type of devotion which is only characterized maybe only by superficial discretion, but very often also by fear of what others might think. Not the manly thing to do. We are electing to commit ourselves. We are just like that young man who was willing to take everything he could from Jesus in the spirit of conquest. Yeah, I did all those things. Do the moral code? Yeah, that's cute. Yeah, I'll look good, okay? But he said, take everything good in the spirit of conquest, but who went away when it came to committing himself. Don't commit yourself. This male Catholicism is not interior and deep enough, and male behavior does not have true interior life. That's my handicap. Let me go over that again. This male Catholicism is not interior and deep enough. The male believer does not have a true interior life. Men have a handicap of naturally having an interior spiritual life. There's always an impediment pulling back. Women automatically have it. They don't struggle with this. It was Mary who ruminated about these things. Right? Took them in counsel, tried to understand them. Okay? It's counter to the male psychology to be able to default that way. We can with practice, and we can with willingness and God's grace. Okay? But that's what he's saying here. What he maybe thinks is his own particular original style, this discretion and distance or detachment from devotional practice and sacramental life, in effect means that his interior life is defective and lacking depth. Hard words. You know? You think all you needed, Paul, was just flash the moral code in front of you and say, I'll go out and execute it. I don't need any more instructions, you know. I can play ball now. I don't need another coach. I need a coach. I can do it all alone. You know, I'm a semi-Pelagian. You know, by my own means. Oh, I'll do the courtesy and say, hey, God, your will, not mine, and then I go on and do my own will. Just acting my own instinct. You know, those sort of things. But I never knew until John Paul, you know, ended up, you know, articulating this, you know, the true depth of these sort of things. So it's almost like it was almost like when I read the Doc's opinion the first time. So that's it. Another imperfection. Don't worry about it, Paul. My grace is sufficient. Don't worry. Yeah. So I mean, so that was a dope slap for me to see things the way they are, and also get me down from my perch of being pissed off at a lot of guys for being pissed off at whatever religion they had. You know? Now I understand. Better. I don't fully understand. Because there's various reasons why people don't do the devotional and go for the sacraments. Okay? And I'm willing to go one-on-one with anybody if they want to be able to talk in those terms. And it's not that my advice is going to be able to bring it in terms of these things, but you got to keep the dialogue going. You got to keep asking yourself. You got to bring it to your prayer life. Why am I so pissed off? Why do I hate the thought of going to Mass? Why do I hate the fact that I got to talk to a man to confess my sins? Yeah. Why do I just overlook the fact of the grace that I could get by doing Eucharistic adoration? Didn't think about that when I came to AA. Hey, Paul, there's a lot of graces. Remember when you were, was it 13, 14, and you were on, and there at St. Thomas More there doing Eucharistic adoration, how you felt? Just for the feeling alone. You know, the grace and just, they're okay, you know. And you were just hoping that your drawer as the altar boy is going to be the 2 o'clock one. That you run out of the I never got that. Okay. But the fact that I'm putting myself in his presence for him to say, okay, whatever you have to say, tell me. However you want to heal me, I want you to start healing now. I got a few things I want to say. And then if you want to chuckle, I'll give you my plans. Whatever it might be, and keep it simple. And sometimes it's just, and then to get the real deep prayer too, the interior prayer too, and just being present. That being the real formula. Just being present. All these things, you know, that I would just say, you know, as a male, I don't need that. Well, they say he said, are you religious? No, but I'm spiritual. Oh yeah, prove it. Prove it. Well, I do. I pray. Okay. Do you worship God? you worship? Because when we're talking gratitude, we're talking, who are you going to thank? Worship. Why am I breathing? Why am I here today? Why are we all here today? You know? Do you ever take time to worship, to give him thanks in community? Because he didn't just create just Paul White. No. He created us together to be a family. He wants all of us. Come on, guys. You know, we know we're all screwed up. You know, and that's what's so beauty about AA. You know, once you make that conversion, that spiritual awakening, that I could just look at things, you know, and that are termed as religious with a whole new pair of glasses. I know what they're trying to get at, and when they get at it poorly, I can forgive that. You know, and I can just say, well, by the grace of God, go I, and just another guy that just isn't informed. He doesn't know what he doesn't know. Now, here's one of Jesus' last words: "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." You know? It's everywhere, everywhere. And yet there are giants out there that can feed me, my intellect and my soul. Okay, that are out there that I can take advantage of if I just get off my high horse and not be so damn arrogant. And see Father Barron and others. And I go, holy shit! That makes sense. You know. Maybe now that might be at that point there, have even taken action. The other thing is, so he nailed it. I'll tell you. Just get that last reflection from him. Okay, but that's the heart of really his talk there too. The other thing that I wanted to get to and make sure that I mentioned, okay, so we can't go it alone. It's terribly important. Okay? We can't go it alone. That I need other people, and I need somebody to tell me, Paul, you're screwed up. You know? That doesn't sound right. Well, that's that off-the-wall question that uncovers something I ought to know, and that ain't right. You know? When I do wrong today, that's a mistake. Okay? But there are some good things that I do that are not a mistake, that are just plain wrong because of my motive. You know? That's the point you kind of get, once you're in AA or you start the spiritual path for a while. I have to start looking at my motive. You know, but stuff we let off with. I'm a good guy. Okay. Taking care of her. You know, what a hero. And it's not that way at all. Let's see. So that's terribly important. That was even written, to Bill when he ended up, writing to Father Ed. I need you. Keep calling me on my stuff. Keep telling me when I'm screwed up and I'm all about me, because that's the way I default. I can't get this alone. God isn't going to keep talking to me. I just got to pick up the phone and talk to him. Sorry. And you're the only one that understands me. So by luck, my first sponsor became that person that I could just, it all came out. And God kicked most of it out, and everything else, I'm not surprised by it. It's come out since, and we all have each other. So those are the impediments, so just to be able to show up at church. Now, and when you get into the Catholic Church, there's a whole different dynamic. You got people that are all pissed off really because they've been hurt. They know someone that's been hurt. They were treated by a priest that was in a rude fashion. Or they're like my friend, Tony Sabino. He was the fool in our parish that went to the pastor who was the biggest asshole you'd ever want to meet, as far as being a pastoral, before he could raise money. He goes into his confession and he starts, telling his sins of, flesh, and next thing you know, he hears, "You did what?" And next thing you know, Tony's running out of the confessional booth and he never came back, That was a real wound.
Yeah.
All right? How do you call somebody back to the church and say, "You're welcome"? Not that asshole's there. That's number one. How could I ever, put all that stuff in perspective? But what if I were in first century, Jerusalem, okay? And they tell me about these 12 apostles, and I say, yeah, but what about Judas? He betrayed your master. And you guys say, and he gave you he picked you out. Remember, he went for prayer for a long time before he selected, and he was chosen, and he betrayed him. What about that? They should not listen to you guys. And what's the only response? Focus on the other 11. All of whom, except for John, died a martyr's death. Yeah? And they had the light. You know? I'm human, you know? I'm human. They're human. If I'm Satan, okay, and I want to unravel the church, who do I take out? I take away people's devotion from the sacrament of Eucharist. And how do I do that? I take out the priests. Less priests, less Eucharist. Less people talking God's word. Okay, simple as that. So how do I do that? Encourage them in the flesh. Right? But that's just a broad overview. But there's other things. Once I became open to asking some of these questions, there's so many people, knowledgeable people that have been in this stuff more than I, not just looking from the outside and just here's what I read, guys, but people that are actually worked with these people that have committed these horrific crimes against people and against God's church. Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Yeah? You're hurting all of us. We all feel the pain. Okay? But here's what there was. I'm going to just run to the couple of reflections that I had. And this comes from actually this particular book here called George Weigel, The Courage to be Catholic. It was published back in about 2003, 2004, and it came out right after the sex scandal. Okay? And it was so timed. I looked at it and I get from being a real pissed off dude to be able to say, now I can understand. I'm angry. I'm still angry. But now I have a little bit more understanding after I read that book. So what the hell went on? Okay. But let me just give you the salient points that I was able to kind of glean from this. At its core, I believe the sexual abuse crisis in the Catholic Church was the failure of fidelity to the truth. If a man has not been taught that the Church's sexual ethic is true and that the truths it contains are liberating, if it has been taught, as many seminarians were during the 70s and 80s, that the Church's teaching on several hotly debated issues of sexual morality is false, he will almost certainly not teach those truths as a priest, and likely not live a chaste, celibate life either. The intellectual deceit and self-deception they learn in the seminary will often express itself in behavioral deceit and self-deception. We had a real bad crop for a long time in seminaries. My brother has a good friend, okay, that left St. John's Seminary because he felt pressured out by the gay lobby. You know? They not only were doing their own thing, but they said, I want you to condone it. He said, I'm out of here. Okay? But it was that type of shit that was going on there. And it was almost like sexual things, well, that's debatable. Well, the jury's out on that. You know, Humani Vitae, that's not really dogma, that's an opinion. And all those sort of things there too. So, is it any surprise that this occurred? It doesn't take away the sting and the horror of it all. Okay? But for me, it just kind of put a certain perspective. Hey, Paul, that's a fact check. Okay. Another thing that I find is that the other thing is that the narcissism, the sheer narcissism of many men that came into the priesthood. They felt rejected for other reasons in the outside world, and they think, I guess I can still be a priest. Right? A lot of undealt with issues. You know, you owe me. Okay, I've been screwed, and now I'm at the doorstep of a seminary. I have no place else to go. He says, not having one's needs met during childhood can create a situation in which a person believes they must meet their needs. In a separate article, and this is by this guy named Richard Fitzgibbons, who was a psychiatrist, a very devout Catholic psychiatrist that doesn't pull any punches, okay? And he's been counseling these people for 20, 30 years, okay? In a separate article, Fitzgibbons and his colleagues in practice said that treating large numbers of seminarians, priests, and religious for more than 35 years, they have learned there's a direct link between unresolved anger from childhood and later rebellion against the Church's teaching on sexual morality and sexual acting out. You know? These guys, all I see them is a number, and I just say, you bastard, you shouldn't have done that, you're a sicko. You know? Never really thinking about, how all this thing came about. You know? And now I see them as a wounded person. who did horrible, horrible things. They're all yets for me too. They're all yets. So let me just to finish up that thought. Okay, he says this guy Fitzgibbons. He went on. He said, who wrote a letter to the U.S. bishops. Okay, this guy Fitzgibbons. He knows this stuff so well that they were relying on him. Tell us what's really going on here. All right. So he wrote to the U.S. bishops at the height of the sexual crisis in 2002 and said that those who were treating priests who engaged in pedophilia or other sexual conduct, okay, found that those priests, almost without exception, suffered from denial of sin in their lives. All right? Now, how often I do that, okay? That's not really a sin. Or if it is, I'll deal with it later. All right? I'm not going to talk about that. Okay? They were also unwilling to admit and address the profound emotional pain they had experienced in childhood, of loneliness, and often in the father relationship. That's key. I never knew how important the father relationship was until I came to learn some of this stuff. Peer rejection, lack of male confidence, poor bodily image, sadness, anger. Broken men that went into this ministry. Okay? And look what happened. Look what happened, you know? And we're trying to fill vocations. You know, we weren't screening these guys. You know? So Fitzgibbons showed that their anger is often directed at the church, the Pope, and other religious authorities. This also led to their treating others, including children, as objects. So, you know, when I came across that stuff, and a lot of this stuff, I came over and listening to certain broadcasts and hearing this guy being interviewed and reading some of this stuff, and there's 1,001 things that are out there if you just ever want to look at, because it's almost like, say, what's the rest of the story? What's the rest of the story? I didn't know the rest of the story. I came to challenged by my sponsor. Let me tell you that probably the pivotal event that happened to me to want to become spiritually mature and stop being a crybaby about being Catholic. My sponsor, okay, was a Catholic priest, okay, but he always emphasized that you're going to do the 12 steps first. In fact, when I was only 6 months sober, not even that, maybe 4 months sober, my brother heard that I got sober, and he said, you ought to go on a Cursillo. And I went to one in Easton. I got a lot out of it, okay, and I was starting the spiritual path, and they had the blue books, you know, you fill them all out. I'm getting all this stuff, you know, and learning about piety and everything else. One guy in a group called it Piety. and I'm going through all this type of stuff, and then it came to the time at the end of the session, they said, go up and do your, and give, you know, how you changed, okay? And I did my deal, and it was kind of non-eventful, and I went back to my seat, and the books were gone. Guess I'm not going to start up in those notes. Okay? So that's taken out for me, okay? And I'm still seeing Joe, and I'm trying to work through the steps. I go back to Joe that Monday night. I said, Joe, you don't know what I did this past week. I was at Garcia. He got very quiet. I said, you'd be cloning, Bob. You should be clipping your heels, you know. So I wish you had asked me first of all. So watch that. I would discourage you from going. So why? This is good stuff. And all the stuff that was exposed to, you know, turn over. He says, no. You don't need that now. You need to build an authentic relationship with God, you and God, now, okay, through the 12 steps. That can come later. But you are running the risk of that particular experience becoming just an emotional experience. You know, I'm going to talk about being zapped, you know, that team thing. It becomes an emotional thing, and you'll hang your hat on that, and you'll walk away from AA. And you'll have so much unleft business to do. And I thought to myself, I didn't even tell him that I lost my notes. You know? But, you know, there's no coincidences. You know? That was really occurred. So, you know, so that was, you know, that sort of thing. So that kept me on the dean. So, all right, you got my attention, Joe. I'm going to go for that. But I continued, you know, to go to Mass and to confession and things like that. I began, you know, going back to the church, you know, because I was going with a whole new pair of glasses. And I'll never forget the most chilling experience that I probably ever had, okay? And I was probably only about a month sober. And my office was at was at 75 State Street, and I went up to Arch Street Chapel. And this old priest was saying Mass. And he was reading the liturgy that comes just before the consecration. He's praying to the saints and to Mary. And the way, his mannerism, everything else, he was just saying it just melted me, you know? You're saying AA prayers here, guys. You know, it all makes sense, you know? And I really felt that I was participating. This is one, oh shit, I'm so glad I'm here. You know, I had tears. I felt at home, you know? And maybe, you know, later on I'd just say, I want to keep going to see that guy, because, you know, I keep trying to repeat that thing. But God put other people, and that just continued to be able to enrich me, you know? To Father Fergus, you know, in the confessional booth, I had no idea what I was expecting. Just nervous hell, you know. Father, you know, recovering alcoholic. And I don't know when the last time I was here. Welcome, son. Oh, we love you guys. You know, break the ice like that. And then at the end of confession, after I put all this out, I said, that's the best I can do for now. He said, that's enough. That's enough. It's God's so happy you're here. You know? It's your happy. And remember this, there's always fresh starts. And you got a fresh start right now. There's always fresh starts. Before you leave, I just want to tell you one thing. What's that, Father? It was an honor to have heard your confession. Holy shit. You talk about how God used me. Holy shit. He used me for food for him too. You know, those smoke. I can see him going back, you know, to the house and, hey guys, I got a guy came in, you know. He's been out for over 20 years. You know? Hasn't done nothing, you know. AA guys, I think he's on his way. You know, that's so hope. You know, that I was able to give him that. And how much he means to me. It was an honor. Well, he'd be for certain, you know, I would look at that calendar, when's Father Fergus giving confessions, and I became a regular. And a couple of times I would take him off to the side in the side room, and we'd chat about some things. And there'd be other priests there too, that he wasn't there. And I go in, that God gave me the grace. He gave me what I needed. You know? I had one like about a month ago, and I started talking about this particular thing, and he just stopped me and he said, why do you think you're doing that, Paul? No, I don't think so. I think that's a symptom. Let's get down to what's going on, where that hollowness is, you know? Holy shit, it's calling me out. I thought, you know, it's 5 people out here. You know? We don't want to talk about that shit. You know? But it made it right, you know? All of a sudden it became to look back at the reality of me, who I am, where I am with God. What makes me tick. So, you know, like I mentioned, I kind of a little bit tangent, but I'm willing to talk to anybody. There's so much information out there that you could even read and reflect on some of these sort of things, the brokenness that you have as far as your relationship. But probably the most succinct, you know, that I've heard advice in AA, okay, is when I hear people bitch and moan because, boy, the halls are filled with them. I'm a recovering Catholic. You know, I hate my church. I grew up with a punishing God. Now, the God of my understanding wasn't working for me. And all that stuff, you know. And I understand where they're coming from, okay? Because they accept it as being a punishing God and all that type of stuff. But sometimes I just feel like saying, who told you? Who told you it's a punishing God? Well, he's full of shit. Let me tell you right now. That's not my God. If I had that kind of God, shit, I wouldn't believe in God at all. I wouldn't even be an agnostic. You know? You know? But sometimes, you know, I'll tell you, how many times, like, you know, in AA meetings, I just feel like, you know, there's sort of an impulse sometimes, you want to wring their neck, you know? Because it's so elemental. You know, they say, you got a problem with institutions. Hey, Paul, remember we talked about people, places, and institutions? A lot of people skip institutions. They just think it's the IRS and then the cops. You know? How about church? That's an institution. Got a problem? Okay. Well, Father O'Malley. Okay, let's talk about Father O'Malley. What did he do? What happened? What did that affect? Okay. What was my problem? I didn't do anything. Okay. It's fine. Right? You were wounded. You need healing. God's going to fix you. All right? He's going to fix you in His time, okay? Okay? God may take a long time, okay? He may be long, but He's never late. Never late. He'll save you. He may be slow, but He's never late. Trust that too. You know, so all those things, I don't care what my brokenness is, whether it be sexual, emotional, physical, you know, it doesn't matter. That's the brokenness that He gave me. That's my cross. I give it to Him. I'm united. And I get benefit. I become better rather than bitter. shouldn't be this way. Well, I should act out on my feeling. Why? Well, I got relief for 12 seconds. Then what? So I got back as shit. Why is that? Well, I don't know. So how am I going to fix that? Why do I do what I ought, what I know I ought not to do? It's St. Paul in Romans. There are these things I know I ought not to do. You need to save them. But he tells me that my grace is sufficient. And all I got to do is open myself to it. There's one thing, there's a book, you never know who you might run into. There's a woman who's been treating adolescent girls for about 20 years in practice, okay? Pediatrics and into young adulthood, okay? She's dealt with a lot of broken women, a lot of girls. And the reason they're broken is because of their dad. The dad hasn't lived up to their responsibility as a spiritual father, as a real father. Okay? And even though I knew, okay, being a dad was important, but I had no idea the impact that a father has on their daughter. Profound effect. Okay? Meg Meeker, in this particular book, let me just make some of the points that she has made here. This will blow you away. Because when I ended up reading this thing, I said, shit, I got lucky with some of these things. You know, but it wasn't through my consciousness or knowing that that's the thing that I ought to do. I just got goddamn lucky and I had a hero of a wife. You know, that kept Bethany safe. Okay, but I didn't know that these were the tipping points. And when you talk about broken women that are out there, you know, that are at risk, you know, whether it be prostitution or enslavement or whatever, or just acting out, all they want to be is loved and protected. You know? And I didn't know what an awesome responsibility I had in playing that in my daughter's life. And really, any little girl, you know, that I come in contact with. You know, be that best uncle or whatever it might be. What she writes is that a father, you have the opportunity to influence her, to shape her character, and to help her find herself, to enjoy living. You can help her physically, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. What are you going to do when you grow up? Your daughter needs a hero, and she has chosen you. Not through my work, but she's still chosen me. Okay. Now, when we talk about heroes, you know, they're people who, you know, preserve, exhibit, you know, altruistic love, faithful in their convictions, you know, the right understanding from right and wrong and act on it. Okay. To see one requires fortitude, mental self-control, and physical restraint. You know, all those mature things that we could be a man. It means walking into embarrassing, uncomfortable, and even life-threatening situations in order to rescue your daughter. It's laying it all on the line to protect her. You're my girl. Daddy's going to protect you. Whatever outward impression your daughter gives, her life is centered on discovering what you like in her and what you want from her. She knows that you are smarter than she is. She gives you authority because she needs to love and adore, because she needs you to love and adore her. She's attached whether you like it or not. I don't care what kind of a bastard you are. You know, there's a bond there. She wants you to be her hero, someone who is wiser, steadier, and stronger than she is. The only way you can alienate your daughter in the long term is by losing her respect, failing to lead, or failing to protect her. To protect her. I just kind of, you know, didn't pay attention to a lot of that stuff that my daughter was doing, you know, whether she was being safe or not. I mean, some of the obvious stuff was for sure, but I really didn't think about it. And you ought to be, you know, pay attention, Dad. Pay attention to these things. Because, you know, she's not necessarily going to articulate these things, but they're real. And they're going to define who she is if I poison it or I don't attend to it. She says, one of the ways the father can raise his daughters is ways that the best fathers can do is to raise your daughter's expectations. I didn't know that. That will directly affect how your daughter talks, dresses, and how well she does in school, even what sports or musical instruments she chooses to play. You can help her set goals, help define her purpose in life, and as a result, her self-esteem will skyrocket. I never knew I had this power. Have these discussions. I was like, how's your day today? Your daughters can become defiant, manipulative, and wear you down, but preserve. The minute you waffle on your convictions or you lose stature in your daughter's eyes. All right? She thinks you are smarter than other parents, tougher than her boyfriend, and care more about her and what's right for her than anyone else. Anyone else in her life. Any other guys. True masculinity is the moral exercise of this authority. I'm responsible to do these things. This isn't just intellectual stuff that I'm laying out here. You know, one of the last regions of the brain to mature is the frontal cortex, which is really executive functions. Planning, setting priorities, organizing thoughts, suppressing impulses, and weighing them in one's action. I hear that it takes up like age 27 to fully develop. Shit, I got married at 22. My wife was screwed. She had no idea what she was doing. Your daughter wants your attention because she senses the strength and concern behind your silence. That's the big thing for guys. Your silence. Dad didn't say anything. Oh, he's thinking. Right? But by your silence. Okay. But she senses, you know, that strength behind it, and she senses that you're genuinely interested in what she has to say. And that makes your daughter feel significant, mature, and self-confident in love. Lack of time or misuse of it causes great anxiety. So really what I have to do, you have to defend her. Protect her from sexual activity when she dates, and when she's dating, do simple things like sweep the garage. Date comes home, Daddy's here. Dad's around, right? Think the guy wants to make eye contact? Are you messing with this little girl? Right? But she talks about these simple things, and she mentioned that only because her husband ended up doing it. She said, why are you sweeping the garage, you know, the driveway? Right? And then finally she goes, oh, Katie's coming home. 11:30 at night, what the hell are you doing out there? You know? But to protect her. And then, like, you know, and she's being pressured by him to do stuff that she knows she ought not to do. And really her out is like saying, Daddy won't let me. I know what you want. Yeah, I agree. And me too. I love you too. I want to have sex this way and that way and everything else, but I'm sorry. I mean, this guy holds all the cards. He'll kill me, honestly. And he'll kill you first. You know? But those sort of responsibilities that I'm protecting her. You know? Who knows more like what an animal a guy is when it comes to sexual matters than a guy, right? But I always just figured, now that was the stuff, let women talk about women's stuff and all that sort of thing. And the guy was just, you know, pay the bills, put a room over their head, you know, pick up a check, whatever it might be. And how terribly important this is. You know, and you have to teach her about God. Okay? And let me just give you a story, okay? Out of this, you know, why God? And this is, again, gets into the spiritual maturity. You know, you say, you know, well, my faith is my private matter. Or what if she says, oh, my wife will take care of that. Or she'll go to CCD or whatever it might be, or she'll get us paid for it, and she'll figure it out. And I don't even know what a central role that I have in your spiritual development. And here's a particular story that Meg Meeker, you know, talks about. Oh, here's one. Okay. This girl, okay, she goes to a Midwestern college, okay? Parties, party, flunks out. Comes home humiliated. Okay? When she finally parked the car in the driveway of her parents' house, she saw that Dad's Chevy was in the garage. No one met her outside. She walked up the steps and peered like a stranger through the window to see them. before they saw her. They were drinking coffee in the kitchen. Somehow this made her feel more in charge. The door was unlocked and Ainsley said the next few minutes changed her life forever. As she pushed the door open, she saw her mother first, her face puffy and red from crying. She looked tired and angry and sad. Ainsley went to her and hugged her. Then she saw the look on her father's face. Anticipating anger and disappointment, she was confused by his expression. He looked strangely calm and kind. She hugged him and wanted to cry, but she couldn't. Her mother shouted, "Ainsley, that has been foolish. She had been thrown away her future. She had shamed the family." Ainsley stood quietly in silence and listened. Then in the middle of her mother's lecture, her father came toward her and whispered, "Are you all right?" She burst into tears. Ainsley realized that moment that her father knew better than she knew herself. While she felt confused, she understood that he saw right through her. He recognized that no one else could, that something was broken inside the girl he cherished. Ainsley's father didn't make her work that night shift at McDonald's or at the local gas station. He waited, he listened, and he kept his hurt to himself. He wasn't concerned with what the family and friends would think. He didn't worry about how the expulsion would change her future. He worried about her. You can't imagine how that felt, Ainsley told me. It was over 30 years ago. The love I felt from him is as fresh and new as it was then. I knew he loved me. Sure, he was proud of me, but that was always on the periphery of our relationship. He didn't let his disappointment or anger ever supersede his love. In those moments after I walked through the door, I got a glimpse of who I was in his eyes. I knew then that I, not what I accomplished, was what he cherished. That's the guy stuff. That's the father stuff that I'm capable. Or any woman. Any broken person. Are you all right? And say, he didn't tell his mother to shut up, leave her alone. In his own quiet way, in his silence. And as John Paul was, talking about, men's, the way we just hold back, we pull back. We won't love. Sometimes that's a gift. That's because it allows us for that silence, like it happened here. But the thing that I want to, impress as far as male spirituality is, it's great for me to be able to do all these things or accept these things and work into my life as far as my development. But I have such a responsibility to others. I really do. He didn't put them in my life for nothing. I don't care what hurt soul is he. He didn't put them there for nothing. And a lot of people will probably say, because everything becomes so secularized, and so few people that are regular attendees at whatever denomination that they practice, that all of a sudden, like religion becomes, well, that's optional. They'll pick it up. Right? Well, what I'd like to share with you, okay, and then I'm going to open up to questions. And this is a letter that Babe Ruth had written. It was really transcribed to someone who was with him on his deathbed back in 1948. He was writing to some kids who were just wishing him well. He heard about your illness, Babe. But let me just, and I think this will probably, give you a sense as to how terribly important. I don't care what denomination it is, but you tell them about God, what you believe. You give them something even to be able to reckon with. And even if they reject it and go off the path, that don't matter. That's not your deal. My deal is though, but I've got to be able to give them a rock, okay, that you can fall back on at some point. Because someday you're going to wake up and say, I need this. That's what happened to me in my spiritual life. I need his church, I need the sacraments, I need AA. I need you. I don't know when that's going to occur for all of it. But here's what Babe wrote. Don't get the idea that I'm proud of my harum scarum youth. I'm not. I've simply had a rotten start in life, and it took me a long time to get my bearings. Looking back at my youth, I honestly don't think I knew the difference between right and wrong. I spent much of my early boyhood living over my father's saloon in Baltimore. And when I wasn't living over it, I was living in it, soaking up the atmosphere. I hardly knew my parents. St. Mary's Industrial School in Baltimore, where I was finally taken, has been called an orphanage and a reform school. It was, in fact, a training school for orphans, incorrigibles, delinquents, and runaways picked up on the streets of the city. I was listed as incorrigible. I guess I was. Perhaps I would always have been that, except for Brother Matthias, the grandest man I have ever known, and for the religious training I received there, which has since been so important to me. I doubt that if any appeal could have straightened me out except for the power over and above man, the appeal of God, the ironclad discipline, couldn't have done it, nor all the punishment and reward systems that could have been devised. God had an eye out for me, just as he has an eye out for you. And he was pulling for me to make the grade. As I look back at it now, I realize that the knowledge of God was a big crossroad for me. I got one thing straight, and I wish all kids did, that God was boss. He was not only my boss, but boss of all my bosses. Up till then, I had all the bad kids. Like all bad kids, I hated most of the people who had control over me and could punish me. I began to see that I had a higher person to reckon with, who never changed, whereas my earthly authorities changed from year to year. Those who bossed me had the same self-battles. They, like me, account to God. I realized that God was not only just, but merciful. He knew we were weak and that we're all found it easier to be stinkers than good sons of God, not only as kids, but all through our lives. That clear picture, I'm sure, would be so important to any kid who hates a teacher or resents a person in charge. That picture of my relationship to man and God was what helped me relieve my bitterness and rancor and a desire to get even. I've even seen a great number of he-men in my baseball career, but I've never been equal to Brother Matthias. He stood 6 feet, weighed 250 pounds, all muscles. He would have been successful at anything in life if he wanted to be. He chose the church. It was also he who introduced me to baseball. Very early he noticed I had some natural talent throwing and catching. And he used me in the corner of the big yard of St. Mary's to bunt the ball to me hour by hour, correcting the mistakes I had made with my hands and my feet. And I'll never forget the first time I saw him hit a ball. The baseball was in 1902 and was a lump of mush, and Brother Matthias would stand at the end of the yard and throw the ball up with his left hand and give a terrific belt, and he held in his right hand. The ball would carry 350 feet, a tremendous feat in those days, and I would watch bug-eyed. Thanks to Brother Matthias, I was able to leave St. Mary's in 1914 and begin my professional career with the famous Baltimore Orioles. Out on my own, free from the rigid rules of religious school, boy, did it go to my head, I began to cut capers. I strayed from the church, but I don't think I forgot my religious training. I just overlooked it. I prayed often and hard, but like many irrepressible young fellows, the swift tempo of living shoved religion into the background. So what was all the hard work and ceaseless interest of the brothers? People would argue. You can't make kids religious, they say, because they just won't take. Send the kids to Sunday school and they often will end up hating it and the church. Don't believe it. As far as I'm concerned, I think as far as most kids go, once religious sinks in, it stays there. Deep down. The lads who get religious training get it where it counts, in its roots. They may fail it, but it never fails them. And when the score is against them, or they get a bum pitch, that unfailing something inside is there to draw on. I've seen it. with our kids. I know from the letters they write to me. The more I think about it, the more important I feel to give the kids the works as far as religion is concerned. They'll never want to be holy. They'll act like tough monkeys in contrast. But somewhere inside will be a solid little chapel. It may get dusty from neglect, but the time will come when the door will be open with much relief, but the kids can't take it if we don't give it to them. I've been criticized as often praises my activities with kids on the grounds that I was a kid for publicity. Well, criticism doesn't matter. I never forgot where I came from. Even dirty-faced kid I see is another useful every dirty-faced kid I see is another useful citizen. No one knew better than I what it meant not to have your own home, backyard, your own kitchen and icebox. That's why through all the years, even when the big money was rolling in, I never forget. St. Mary's, Brother Messiah's, and the boys I left behind. I keep going back. I look back at those moments when I let the kids down. They were my worst. I guess I was so anxious to enjoy the best of my life to the fullest, I forgot the rules and ignored them. And once in a while you can get away with it, but not for long. And when I broke training, the effects were felt by myself and my ball team, and even my fans. While I drifted away from the church, I did have my own altar. A big window of my New York apartment overlooking the city lights. Often I would kneel before the window and say my prayers. I would feel quite humble then. I'd ask God to help me not to make such a fool of myself, and prayed that to assure what he expected of me. In December 1946, I was in a French hospital in New York facing a serious operation. Paul Carey, one of my oldest and closest friends, was by my bed that night. We're going to operate in the morning, babe. Don't you think you ought to put your house in order? I didn't dodge the long, challenging look in his eyes. I knew what he meant, and for the first time I realized death might strike me out. I nodded, and Paul got up. I called the chaplain, and I made a full confession. I'll return in the morning to give you to Holy Communion, the chaplain said. You don't have to fast. I'll fast, I said. I didn't have a drop of water. As I lay in that bed, I thought to myself, what a comforting feeling to be free from fear and worries. I now could simply turn them over to God. Later on, my wife brought me a letter from a little kid in New Jersey. Dear Babe, he wrote, everybody in the 7th grade is pulling and praying for you. I am enclosing a medal, of which if you wear, will make you better. Your pal, Mike Quinlan. P.S. I know this will be your 61st home run. You'll hit it. Okay. I asked them to pin the miraculous medal to my pajamas. I've worn that medal constantly ever since. I'll wear it to my grave. So, that's the end of the verbal. Why don't we open it up for discussion? Thanks. Yes?
Great talk, great preparation, excellent. I really enjoyed the male psychology. I thought that was really good. I didn't realize my wife knew a hell of a lot more than I did. But on Babe Ruth, I had never heard that before. That's terrific. But my dad, when I was very younger, I belonged to Pierre Marquette Knights of Columbus in South Boston. And Babe Ruth, when he played for the Red Sox, was installed, and was a third-degree knight of Pierre Marquette.
Oh, neat.
Columbus.
Oh, man.
That's it.
Thanks.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. You don't want me to go back to my notes. Yep.
I'm still moved. You know, back to AA when you're speaking,
Yes.
the 12 steps, and I was very moved by your word about you couldn't do it alone. And not just like in AA, but even like you're talking in school of your experience with the Spirit. We need a guide to enter into the other side.
Yeah.
Because we're scared of what that's like. Even myself, in the program of AA in the beginning, and I identified what you were talking about to Crucille.
Yeah.
Because we talked a little bit last night.
Oh, really? Yeah.
My experience from religion.
Yeah.
And I was very moved by that too, because the time wasn't there yet.
Mm.
And how did that man know?
How did he know what, that time wasn't right?
It wasn't right for you.
Oh, that was just his discipline as being a sponsor.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't care what religion you are, you're not gonna run off on any retreat, not until we go through the 12 steps.
But it's still caught
But,
me.
oh yeah, but he knew about, you know, he said, I'm not bad mouthing, okay? But he knew guys that came out of there and all it was an emotional rip, okay? And it was like, oh, do you go to see? Yeah, that was in the past. It was a distant memory. You know?
I'm still moved
So-
by the fact that we need somebody to guide us into the interior, not just in whatever the self-help program is.
Exactly.
I'm in AA, but once that's established, because you mentioned earlier, like it's the bedrock, those principles, but to be moved even more into the interior of that.
The interior life.
And into the spirit. I call
And
that.
the spirit, right? The spirit is there in our interior life, is manifested.
I was moved by those
Yeah.
words and your experience about that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I never even knew the language or even off the concepts and things like that. I mean, I've heard some of these sort of concepts, but a lot of these things I've come to learn, okay, since I came to AA, about spiritual principles and the spiritual life. I was really misinformed. You know, I was working with the wrong vocabulary. The terminology wasn't right, you know. And I learned that early on, just going through AA, when they taught me how to pray like that. You know? Thy will be done. Oh shit, you gotta put that divisory there? You know? I can continue with petitionary prayer, but it's like asking, hey Dad, can I go take the car? You know, that's the way Joe explained it to me. Sure you can ask, he doesn't mind you asking. Don't apologize for asking, but he might say yes, no, or he might say later. So, you know, all these sort of things there too, that come alive there too, as it continues to unfold. This particular article on Babe Ruth, I wouldn't have known about this if it weren't for a homily on EWTN. It was a priest who was quoting, you know, from this thing. I go, holy shit! And then you do the web search and stuff like that, and you go, oh man, there's the article. That's great. That's me. Now, here's a guy, the Babe. You know, the Babe converted at the end. Good man. Him and George Washington. Yeah.
Yeah, I was moved by, you talked about you walked me through the daughter looking in the windows. And I have an 18-year-old son and a 6-year-old daughter. And my son he's got some stuff he's carrying around. I thought to myself, instead of this hammer, this disciplinary hammer, this role of the father, and addressing the brokenness and addressing the mistakes. How are you doing? How are you doing?
What do you think about all this?
Yeah, and well, right.
I haven't heard your side of
You
this thing.
teased that out of me as I thought to myself, and all of that brokenness and the shame. And what struck me is the shame that the pieces I walked in here with, and the shame. And I recently, I'm sitting with a guy who comes to my house, and we're going through the steps. I realized something that I had carried for 32 years, the shame. So when you were going through that sequence of the shame, I thought, you know, in that term, this too shall pass, the shame will pass. How are you doing right now? Which resonates, which really is the sticking part. Are we there to gather up and come here? And it's not about the garbage or the storm you're in. It's how do you feel about this? And being there, you know, I'm with that girl. I'm with her looking in the window as you brought us through that. I thought of my own children.
Yeah.
And I thought of this sequence 32 years ago with my father, which was similar, being asked not to come back.
Yeah.
And
that's he saw as his role.
and so that piece of what it just was poignant. That how do you feel about this? Where are you? We'll get to that. Tell me where you are.
Where are you right now?
Yeah, that
Where are you
was
right now?
striking to me.
Yeah.
That was how
Yeah.
that's what's going to register and resonate. There's our opportunity.
I know. And
So
it was a moment of grace because they lived in the moment.
Yeah, right.
They lived in
That
the
was-
moment. Not the past, not
No.
the future,
Not what's
When are
going
you
to
gonna
happen.
flip, when are you gonna flip burgers?
Not
you know?
consequences. How?
Yeah.
Where are you?
Where are you?
That was.
Yeah.
That was powerful.
And to feel, for someone to be able to ask that, you know, and I remember that even in the
Right.
hallway, hey, how you doing, Paul? And they're waiting for an answer.
Yeah. That was important. I just thank you for that.
Mike, alcoholic.
Mike?
Yeah, Paul, it was really good to hear you. You know, I'm not versed at all, frankly. I mean, I was brought up Catholic as far as,
Yeah.
you know, technicality of it. I got none of it.
Yeah.
But it was good to hear you in the sense that I too could sort of piece all of it with, you know, what I'm trying to accomplish, 12 steps, spiritual journey. One of the things you had said was, you know, not the same words, but you know, what I was doing yesterday isn't gonna work for me tomorrow. I gotta keep growing. And I feel like I'm probably in one of those places right now. And that may be true. I mean, just in the stuff going on in my life, I don't really know. I guess I'll find out. But, you know, for me, a lot of my spiritual path is, as far as research, it's a variety of stuff, you know? You know, I read a Jesus Calling book that I love in the morning. That's just a daily little read. But outside of that, it's, you know, it could be a guy like Sandy Beach that you mentioned,
Yeah.
or you know, I was last week. I was telling somebody I was listening to this guy Kyle Cease, who is a comedian who turned, you know, inspirational speaker. So you know, I find that if I can get out of my head, right, all this crap, all the material stuff that you were talking about, and I can realize and just be okay, then that light, which I consider the spirit, can shine in, and that I can be the person that I'm supposed to be. I can be that father. I can be that son. I can just go about and try to do the next right thing, as opposed to me, and I can't see anybody around me, you know. And, you know, quite frankly, right, wrong, or indifferent, I mean, I came into the program with a big resentment against the Catholic Church. I don't have one now, but I don't go to Mass, so I don't know where any of this is going. And I don't know what my
He's
point is, or
leaving.
if I even have a point.
Let him leave.
But, you know, I'm just saying it for the sake of saying it, so I can hear myself talking. Maybe it'll get me somewhere else. Or maybe somebody will tell me what I'm supposed to know. So with that, I'll pass it on to somebody else.
All right.
Hi, I'm the alcoholic. And it was great to hear you. I identified a lot of things. I too live Cresceo. I think I was like 6 years sober, and it wasn't. I'm glad I stuck with AA as a priority instead of getting that emotional high off the Cresceo. By the way, Day Colores.
Big close.
The other thing too that you hit on that, and I also had a son who went up to St. Mike's and he flunked out in his first semester because he was smoking pot and drinking. And I remember how horrified he was to come back home and to accept all, you know, that. And I was just glad that I was sober at that time, that I was able to handle it and look at him as, you know, as being a son of me. There's, you know, there's a lot of like, there's a lot of good literature out there. Richard Rohr writes a good book about Wise Man, Wild Man, Wise Man, about the evolution of the male from that what we are when we're young, and how we can use that experience to help, you know, other people as we grow older. But the real thing I wanted to ask you about was this, when you were talking about the abuse issue in the Catholic Church, and being Catholic, and many times people will use that against Catholics.
Yeah, so why should I listen to you? Yeah.
It's hurtful. And I don't think they realize it. I mean, I think they're trying to think it's like a political statement. But I feel like, you know, that I've had people say things to me, and it was, I just want to say this to you because you talked a little bit, and it was about the,
Perpetrator.
yeah, about the devil, and
Yeah.
I had never heard that and explained quite like that. I don't think people realize how hurt Catholics were because of that whole incident, whether you were abused or you weren't abused.
Yeah.
And you know, you mentioned about institutions, you know, and that a lot of people don't look at the the church as an institution. They just kind of tuck it away.
Yeah.
And I had done that myself.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's really something that you could look at in your fifth step, and how much
Exactly.
you know you did push the institution away, or how much resentment you had towards it, which is something I have to look at also. But thank you for that
Yeah.
little bit. So I got a little antsy about that, and I think
Good.
when you're squirming in these seats, and somebody's delivering a message like that, I think that's when you really need to think about it, you know, because it's sending. To me, it was sending a very strong message, you know, for me to look at. So
That's right. That's right.
that's it. That's all I
Yeah,
have to say.
it starts really with the acknowledgement, okay, what had happened is horrible, so we're never in denial, and the church is never in denial. And the church has always had scandal throughout its history of different ways where the evil one has been able to do his work. This is all a continuum. Nothing wrong here, the Reformation, all that type of stuff that was going
I
on.
almost want to say is that, like, as the alcoholics, we know that we injure ourselves, but we also injure our family so much.
Yeah?
And we don't realize, we don't see it.
No.
And that same hurt that has happened to the
Right.
church, you know, how it influenced all of us.
Yeah.
Even though we might not have been a part of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It still had an effect on us,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
Major.
all my acts of omissions I had toward my daughter after I read Meeker, you know.
Joe, alcoholic.
Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Joe?
So I get confused anyway, but this thing really, you know, I experienced some of the '60s to surprise some people, but the sacramental life, I have confusion about that. One, the sacramental life definition, I think I know, but and you said in the '60s and '70s the sexual stringency almost tore apart the church, as I perceive what you said. And
What, stringency?
yes.
I didn't intend to say that, no.
Well,
No, in other words, it's moral code, okay, or what it feels about sexual matters has always been constant throughout its history. So the church never, you know, identifies with that, but you have to be able to explain it in language that people can understand in the 20th century, and that's the challenge, and that's what Vatican II was all about. And for me personally, my only regret is that what John Paul was writing as a bishop up in Krakow about sexual matters and sexuality, that if that had been published first before Humani Vitae, it would have been embraced by the whole world. Because it would have taken everything that we're talking about under that whole umbrella to be able to put real context and be able to think, what's God's design for man? How am I going to be most happy? You know? And he does it beautifully. And it's called theology of the body. But shit, how many times I just wish, I wish that, you know, that the theology of the body came out before Humani Vitae. Because what happened was with Humani Vitae, and this, I was talking about, you know, what was the changing, you know, thing for me to be able to say, yeah, I think I'll come back and go to church. And I may have some problems with these things that I really don't understand, but I'll just keep my mouth shut based on faith, you know, for a while. But I was talking about these sort of things, in particular sexual matters and contraception. Okay. And Joe was just saying, why aren't you? Well, I'm pissed off this priest that threw my wife off the altar during the offertory because he said she can't stand behind the altar. Came out with confession. Screw that one. I didn't do anything about it. So that was number one. And I'm not too sure. I'm not clear, you know, on this thing about, you know, artificial birth control. You're even telling me as a married man that, you know, I can't use artificial birth control? It makes no sense. You know? And then he said to me, Paul, did you ever read Humani Vitae? I said, well, I know about it. He said, did you ever read Humani Vitae? I've read commentaries, you know, the headlines and all that stuff. And I say, it's a bunch of shit. I hear there's a bunch of other priests out there. There's a bishop up in, you know, Montreal that feels the same way about all that. No. Have you ever read it? No. He said, well, I suggest you read it and then we'll come back and we'll discuss it. Okay? That challenge, that arrogance. I already know this stuff, you know. I already read the headlines. And I got enough other people out there that say I'm an official of the church that agree with me. You know? I read the document, I was in tears. Absolutely right. I could see the heart of it. And again, you know, thank God I was started in the spiritual plane that I was maybe open myself up to God, okay, you show me what I should be reading here. So at least there was some sort of discernment to read it the way it ought to be read. But the richnesses of it, and I just said, it's absolutely right. Absolutely right. You asshole. Your arrogance, that was, they saw before investigation, was the one, Herbert Spencer? Yeah. Thank you.
Right.
Exactly. And that was me for all these sort of things, the debatable type of stuff. Or I heard in the press that this is debatable, and you can feel any way you want. There's no real truth, the subjectivism, the relativity, of that type of stuff. There's no eternal truth.
What was
No
the
eternal.
principle of the human, the difference of, in the article that you read? What was the difference?
Difference between the two, between Humani Vitae
Yeah.
and Humani Vitae lays the groundwork. Because first it defines, let me tell you what a man is. Let me tell you what a woman is. Let me tell you how God expresses love in the Trinity. Now let me show you how he foreshadows that in the relationship that you have with a woman. Okay. I can show you how I love you through your wife, and she can love you, through you. Okay. What it does, it points, to the covenant relationship that I have with my spouse. It's God, me, and my wife. And that's what he planned. That was his original plan. And he's able to go back to Genesis and everything else and explain it very articulately, to us why it all makes sense. And there's even short talks on this thing too. I can point you a few sources, if you're interested, that'll give you the essence of theology of the body. This is a voluminous. It's almost like reading Summa Theologia, of Thomas Aquinas. Okay, but it's very intelligible. Okay, what it is, but there are commentaries, some very good commentaries on there that gets the essence and tell you what it's all about, and it just blew me away.
Did that change your mind on artificial birth control?
No, Humani Vitae was enough.
Huh?
Humani Vitae was enough.
Okay.
For this bloke, that was enough. Okay, but I'm just saying, he could have gone further, in his explanation, and then maybe people get. Now, people would just chosen to ignore that anyway, just like they chose to ignore theology of the body. A lot of people don't even know what the hell it's about, And what it was is that he started with this theme as a bishop, in Krakow, developed it, okay, and then decided when he first became Pope that when he had his Wednesday audience, he said, "You know what I'm going to talk about?" What turned out to be theology of the body. Let's talk about sex. In the plaza there at St. Peter's. Let's talk about human sexuality. And he gave a series of talks about the subject, and he was pretty much like reading his doctoral thesis or something like that. A certain stuff, he kind of laid it out there. And then eventually it was compiled and brought together, and he said, okay, here's the publication, here's what he said about all these things. But it's that richness of things that, I just say, it's not true. And it's like, well, how do you know it's not true? Well, it's just not true. Everybody knows that. The Globe says it, the Herald says it. It's just not true, Well, this particular person, whom I admire, okay, says it agrees with me, okay, and I'm going to hang my hat on their opinion. I don't even know that they're thinking it's flawed, that sort of thing. So, it was, for me, it was just that simple thing to be able to do that, and then they just opened it up. And to be able to find how easy it is to be able to answer some of these questions. I didn't have to go and ask a bunch of people. I didn't go tracking down priests that explain this to me. I just had to do a Google search, Humani Vitae. Comes up, okay, print it out. It's about 15 pages, but it's so intelligible. Anyone that's lived the spiritual life, that's read the big book, can easily read any of these encyclicals or any of these church documents that are out there on their teaching or opinions or moral teachings and all that. So accessible. And every time I read it, I go, it's just like reading the video. So that's it. So that's why. Oh, that makes sense. All these sort of things. And I was just too damn arrogant because I said, you know what? I don't need religion because guess what? I got spirituality. They tell me spirituality, that's all I need. And 70% of the people that share, they say, well, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. And what that does is that I just become, I go it alone. It's really what I'm doing. I'm creating my own higher power. Just me and him. Like I was talking about, we need that feedback from others. We need that feedback. I need the church to tell me the truth. I can take that to the bank. Now I don't have to debate that anymore. And if I'm still confused about it, I just give me more, give me more, give me more. And what I find is these things that I say, that I just say, that makes absolutely no sense. Okay? First I accept it based on faith. I say, well, you must be right, but I still don't agree. And that's why I operate for a long, long time, a lot of issues. And then gradually, either by revelation, but I just woke up and didn't think that way, or by reading something else that enlightened me, that became rational. faith and reason. They support each other. Doesn't mean that they work together at the exact same time, but they support each other. Everything that I accept on faith, there will come a time when I'm going to be able to come to terms with it based on reason. Except, for certain mysteries like the Trinity and things like that, but who cares? All I do is just recognize the reality and as a starting point. How are we doing for time? We've run over, huh? Well, we got some people up for one-on-ones.
Sounds good.
I wouldn't mind going for another hour, guys. I'll tell you. I don't know why I still have enough energy. I must. You better lock the bathroom door. You got to doing something. Okay, but I think someone is. The other one, and we're on for 1:30. 2:30, which is now 2:35. Okay, we'll break it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Why don't we close with a what's the Lord's Prayer? Just so we bring it around to. We're really asking for advice here. I'd like once again to keep it in the day. Let's close with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Amen. Good deal. Nice job. Thank you.
Yeah, and this afternoon.
Thank you.
Earlier than the first conference. Pleasure, power, well was the first one.
wealth and honor.
Honor at the end, wealth at the end. Thanks.
She's at a track meet right now.
Somebody move, I gotta go out.
I sent her a text. I thought to myself, well, that was incredibly powerful. Yeah, powerful.
Okay, you're with me.
Yes.
We're going to have a spiritual talk.
Yeah.
You see this?
Oh no. Yeah. Sure.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Thanks. Great
I
question.
was,
Great question.
Well, I can remember my son was very impressionable. He was 4 when I started. I remember, he was a year ago.
Dennis the Menace.
He came home. He was the best talk.
I talk.
He went down there one-on-one? Next to him. And I was sitting on the back. He's bullied. Those guys because you're
Yeah. To pass that on.
when you were telling that story,
Yeah.
I was thinking,
Yeah.
Probably a
the
higher
gift
level.
was
Oh
right.
yeah. Yeah. That's great. You can find something to be grateful. I'd be more like there's another city. The games begin.
All right. I was, there was a lot, there's funny things, I was actually an altar boy at St. Anthony's with Father Jack.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Huh.
and then they threw us out of the church because we were taller than the new priest that came in.
Oh, okay. That doesn't look good, huh? That's crazy. You can think about some of that stuff. What year was this?
Oh, I don't have any idea.
Okay. In the 60s? 70s?
It might have been the early 70s.
Early 70s, yeah.
Yeah, it must have been the early 70s.
Yeah.
Because how old do you have to be an altar boy?
I think you only had to be like 10.
Yeah, so it was early 70s. But a lot of stuff came up, and I got tremendous amount of physiological things going on.
Yep.
I think I told you about
Yep.
a lot of them: diabetes, herniated discs, upper and lower, and and I'm out on cloud nine in a lot of ways, but the spirituality and a lot of the dialogue and the uses of information out there is interpreted by one who perceives it, and where you're at intellectually, spiritually, let alone emotionally, and in your stage of life and maturity. And there's a whole bunch of things influencing it. And right now, I'm at a bizarre point in that I'm moving on to another chapter, but and like how many people have told me I should be a priest the way I talk, but I guess I'm confused about a lot of this stuff, and something that happened today, I heard you talking about Thomas Emmett Fox with somebody else, and it sounded completely different from the talk that we had.
In what respect?
I
What do
thought-
you think about how it might have differed from Fox?
When you were speaking with Emmett Fox with me when I talked to you the first time, what do you think of Emmett Fox?
A lot of stuff that he says is true, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't agree with everything he says, but I agree with a lot that he has to say.
All right, because a lot of it seems to be anti-Christian.
I know, well, he seems to think you can do it alone spiritually. You don't need the church. Remember, that's where he's starting from, okay? You guys that are wounded have already resigned yourselves to the fact that the church isn't for you, okay? I'm going to help you. So that's the way I look at him, okay? So what he does is he takes wounded souls like me and you when we first come to AA too, and he gives real good spiritual food.
Right.
Okay, he puts on the table, okay? Even to the point that you may be able to kind of drift up by saying, you know what, instead of saying I don't need religion now, I don't need religion ever. Okay? Because I've cast my sail, it's me and God, okay?
That's your interpretation, or you actually read something?
Well, I've read some of the things that he's had, okay, but I'm just talking to your point as far as the theme, where Emmett Fox isn't all that crazy about religion. You know what I'm saying?
That's your interpretation?
No, but no. What do you feel? I thought that's what you were saying.
No.
What are you saying?
I thought he had a lot of good things to say. But
Well, he says a lot of good things about Christianity.
Yeah,
Christianity.
and certainly in accordance with the principles of the 12 steps.
Yeah. Okay.
And yes, I see in some of his readings that a lot of it is brought from other religious orders, so to speak. I think would be the correct use of the word.
Well, yeah, he's used it, and it's a common thing like that. Okay, a lot of people they even took the Sermon on the Mount. Okay,
Yeah.
Gandhi took that. Okay, and used that as a basis too, as a spiritual basis too, to incorporate into his religious tradition too.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to find that people are always going to give, because really, I mean, the Catholic Church feels there's truth everywhere. Okay, there's truth in this religion. I'm not saying it's all true. Okay,
Right.
but you will find truth in these different traditions. Okay, that we will say, yeah, we agree with that. Yeah, we agree with that. All we're saying as Catholic, though, it is our humble opinion that you will find the fullness of truth expressed by us. That's all we're saying. Okay. So what you're saying? So Emmett Fox, I don't care who it is. Okay, that could be some sort of spiritual guru. There often is, a real element of truth that's being expressed there,
Yeah.
which is beneficial because you're giving somebody truth,
Yeah.
and they're accepting it. If someone was up there saying what Emmett Fox had to say and they were in a Roman collar, they probably wouldn't listen to him. They might already be prejudiced. Who knows? So I mean that helps a lot of times too, because whatever their woundedness might be, or that type of stuff. I mean, I can remember my sponsor. One of the most powerful AA tapes that I ever listened to. Okay, was this guy, shared by this guy. His name was Father Bill W. Okay, and he was an Irish monk. That's how he started off. Okay, and became a full-blown alcoholic. Okay. And he gave one of the most powerful testimonies of the active alcoholism. He flipped it over, his conversion, not only when he found AA, but after he'd been for a while, then he had to do the fourth step for real, and all this stuff, the real grind out type of stuff.
Yeah.
And Joe was afraid to give that to me, okay? Because he felt that I might be able to take, because of the fact that he was a religious person, that I might take his opinion higher than I should. I wasn't looking for what it is, I had a preconceived notion, this guy's smart.
Yeah.
Or you can take what he has to the bank
Yeah.
too. And that was not my experience. And I thank Joe. Thank God he gave me that tape, because I mean it moved me. It moved me in so many different ways there too. That I share it with others. to this day, you know. It's just one of those sort of things there too, you know. So like, you know, Emmett Fox and all these things, I see, you know, all these people. I was a Scott Peck,
Yes,
know?
exactly.
another author, you know.
Yes,
Life is difficult. One of the most profound
Exactly.
statements you could ever, you know, occur.
yeah.
So there's spiritual masters over there. Even though it may appear, you know, that I'm speaking of some of the spiritual masters you find in the Catholic tradition, okay? There are so many out there
Yeah.
that all line up.
I got a question, as far as, there were some of the notes that you had read from today, I can't remember which one it was, that were extremely profound and very enlightening. I think it was the discussion that somebody had with Bill.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yes, some of those discussions were extremely enlightening.
Yes.
And I wondered if I might be able to get a photocopy of that.
Yep.
I don't know if there's a thing here or oh yeah, wow. I didn't even see that. I did.
I may have.
I thought they were very moving.
Oh, they are. And that's why I brought them, to tell you the truth. I tell you the truth, I got a shitload of you know, quotes like that, you know, and you're just like,
Yeah.
okay, Paul, which one are you going to go to? Knife. There are 2 folders. They better be out there, or I'm screwed.
You want me to go check?
Should be by the podium. Oh, there they are. They're sitting right on top of it. Yeah, actually, I have this on my Kindle, the book, and I ended up typing out those particular comments from it. And I saved it as a Word document, so I can even send it to you electronically.
By Kindle?
No, I have it on Kindle. All I'm saying is, what I read to you, okay, I ended up,
Yeah.
I'm going to show you what I got.
You can't send things by Kindle wirelessly, can you?
I don't know, I'm not
I
that,
don't think so.
I'm not
Yeah,
that
I'm
smart.
not that savvy on it either. Actually, I probably could download it on Kindle.
No, you don't want to, well, I'm just saying to be able to get that
Yeah,
quote. though, I mean,
1,000 pages says a
This will
book
save, this will save. In fact, trying to read a book on Kindle drives me crazy. I can't find page numbers half the time,
Yeah,
so you don't even know what you're going to be referring to.
yeah, I found that.
Oh, was that this morning? See, I'm looking
No,
at
it
the
was
wrong
this
one.
afternoon.
It was this afternoon, okay, then it should be
Yeah.
good. Song Fathers from Daughters. The Babe. Get to that. What's number 3? Prices. Oh, that was the second part. Oh, this is part that I didn't even get to, okay? This is what I want to do about the discerning at the end of that letter there. That, I think I ended up referring to it, I think, last night. The beginning there. I'll get it to you, I'll tell you what.
Okay,
I've got,
all right.
I know, in fact, I even have an extra copy of just what I had typed up out of that book.
Great.
Okay, so I'll definitely get that to you.
All
And
right.
down the line, I'll get it to you electronically so you can share it if you want, you know?
All right. Thank you.
Put your name to it, you know, say you're the author of the book or something.
The what?
Put your name on it,
Yeah,
so take all the credit.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah, yeah. Good stuff, though. It really is. It was just it was an AA talk. I heard of it too.
Yeah.
A guy talking about this thing, soul of a sponsor. He was telling the story. I was just telling.
Exactly.
I had no idea. Yeah, and how profound it was.
Exactly.
He's right on the side, Joe. He's gonna be right back.
All right, that's fine. I'll just head to that.
think he is really. He's like, he's writing checks to everybody.
Okay, is anybody?
Fucking dirty.
Joe, where's Joe? He's up there smoking. Your 2:30 guy coming?
No.
That was your father-in-law?
Hold on. No, Joe was here, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He didn't come to my wedding, needless to say. Did he really?
3 o'clock, Dennis.
He didn't come to your wedding?
Dennis.
Oh, Dennis.
They say he ran to his car, so maybe.
Right here.
Oh, right here. Oh, what? This Dennis.
Yeah, Dennis. Dennis, you're holding up the frickin' crowd here.
Oh, sorry.
Queue up, guys.
I'll get your check later,
What
Dennis.
you talking about? But, you know, we're so late getting there.
No, I just, I we're on right on time.
Chuck.
Hey, Paul,
How are you, man?
why don't you take a bit there?
Yeah, I know, yeah. I'll leave Mr. Peterman. I'll let him take a note.
Mr. Peter. Well, you have your Vineyard Vines
Yeah,
thing on.
Yeah.
I love it. I have one just like it.
I like the color,
Mine
that's
has-
why I got it.
Mine has the Vineyard Vines logo.
Yeah,
It's very nice.
it is
My
nice.
wife buys me.
Well, I like the quality of the clothing, that's what
Very
draws
nice,
me to it,
very
because it's
nice.
just, even the t-shirts, my God, the material is,
Yeah.
you can't kick.
Yeah, it's a little pricey,
I know,
but,
but how many, when you get this stage of life, how many pieces of
Exactly.
clothing do you
how
buy?
does it really matter?
I know, I'm not buying a
I
lot
just
of
gave
shoes.
Jerry Sullivan a check for $100. They do the Matt Talbot retreat. I mean the Bill Wilson House retreat. He does it in July every year.
Uh-huh,
It's a weekend at Bill Wilson's house,
wow.
like right after July 4th weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice.
Oh, I gotta get up there myself. I wanna get there and I wanna get to Dr. Bob's place, out in
Yeah.
Akron.
And Akron.
That's holy ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, go to
I
the carriage house.
really enjoy the time. I'm sorry if I'm falling asleep a little bit.
No, I'm kind of, yeah, that's
You know,
that's
last
great.
night at 1:30 in the morning, I didn't get to sleep. I came
I didn't get to sleep till like 3 myself.
1:30. I was down here with first with Jerry Sullivan for an hour. Then on the way out, Kevin McCarthy,
Mhm.
the big black kid.
Oh yeah, great
He
guy.
was a 373 guy, and he's been coming here for many, over 20 years. But I started with him. Next thing I look at my watch, it's 10 minutes after 1.
I
I
know.
go upstairs and I'm farting around on the phone.
Then you get a little,
Huh?
a little this and that. And I still hadn't made my bed
Yeah.
when I went up.
Yeah.
Should I was gonna pull like a cheap Boston Patriots there. Don't use the linen or something like that. Sleep on the cover.
On
You
top
know,
of the couch,
yeah.
And you don't have to make the bed up.
you have to make the bed and we get a lower rate.
Yeah. So I'm in a little bit of not turmoil, but there's a lot going on. I just retired March 31st.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That should be a good thing, right?
I beat you by 3 months. It is a good thing.
Yeah.
It is. You'll find it is.
Yeah. They gave me
It's
a little
God's will.
consulting deal,
Yeah.
and my son's calling me. You know, to close business, be
Yeah.
available. You know, when they call me.
Yeah.
But, you know, the other day he calls me at 7:31. I said, "Dad, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm in bed right now. I'm gonna make myself an omelet, and then I'm gonna go for a run." And they said, "Can you come and make a couple of deliveries for me? They're for your customers." I said, "Oh, okay."
Because that personal touch. Yeah.
Yeah.
I need you to come in.
Yeah, Paul Kanelsky will really.
Do you want you coming right away though?
Yeah, you know, as
Oh.
soon as possible.
Okay,
So,
because they wanted it
I
now.
didn't take my shower. I didn't take my.
Yeah.
I just put some jeans on, went in and did it.
Yeah.
But that's not. I'm supposed to go on a motorcycle run August with my friend Brian, who we used to go on commitments 30 years ago when he first got sober. They call him Homie.
Mm-hmm.
He went out on a. I don't mean to be talking about everyone else. It's gonna come back to me, but he went out on a disability from the MBTA when he was 47. He had a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
He's had 2 heart attacks and 5 stents, and he 2 months ago he had his gallbladder out. He had a physical, and his prostate was enlarged.
He's
so
a
it was
mess.
325. So they took his gallbladder out when they were doing the
Arthroscopic.
ultrasound.
Okay.
They said
She's
your
got-
prostate's really enlarged. He says, "I know. I just had a physical." Well, go back. So he made another appointment. It was over 6. Within 6 weeks it went out. So he lives in Daytona Beach, and he has a 4-family house in Quincy. He comes up for the summer, and he's at my age of folks.
He's got 1 million friends, everybody loves him, you know, he writes on Facebook when he's leaving Daytona, I'm leaving all the people I love and coming to see all the people I love, and you know, and he, on May 12th, he was gonna have his prostate removed. And he was a little, he's concerned about it, he says, cause he likes to jerk off and likes to fuck, and you know, he's a single guy. And he ended up having a consultation on Wednesday. I called him Wednesday night to see how he was doing, he didn't call me back. I called him Thursday night, he didn't call me back. I called him Friday, he texted me and said, I'm at MGH, I'll call you back. I called him at 5 o'clock when I was on my way down here. And he answered the phone and he said, where have you been? I said, well, I've been calling and leaving messages. And he told me that they can't do the surgery because it's all through him. It's in his rectum, it's in his wherever else. Yeah, it's sounds. I talked to a friend of mine who's a doctor. He said pretty much a death sentence. But they're gonna start chemo in August, which kind of why wouldn't they just do it right away? And he was crying when he told me. He said, "Well, I want to go on a motorcycle ride with my friend. We're going up to. He's got a friend from New Hampshire. We were going to meet him, the three of us. Drive up to Portland, get on the ferry, go to Nova Scotia, drive around for a week, Prince Edward Island, and all that." And
Well, they, actually, I want to make sure my phone is. I want to make sure that. I'm sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to make sure this thing is on.
oh, sure. I don't worry about it if it goes off.